Afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing Leicester City versus Brentford in a must-win Friday night game for Leicester City Football Club if they stand any chance of staying in the Premier League, if I'm honest. And we're going to be joined by the Ealing Road podcast. Mike's been on the channel before, so we're going to be chatting with him. We're going to be joined by the Leicestershire Live's Josh Holland, who covers all things Leicester City. So we're going to be joined by him as well. Guys, always hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Get down and do so, and let's get the boys in. I'll tell you what, we'll go with Josh first. Josh, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you, mate. How are you?
Very good. Josh, before I get Mike in, let everybody know what you do covering Leicester City Football Club, mate.
Yeah, so obviously cover the club for Leicestershire Live. Has its positive, has its negatives at the weekends, and then in the week I do different stuff around Football London, Manchester Evening News, etc. So writing and covering about football nearly every day of my life, which can't really complain about. There's definitely worse things to be doing, but yeah, and then cover Leicester on social media, on my Twitter and on Leicestershire Live.
Fantastic. Let's get the Ealing Road podcast in. Mike, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Jack. How are you?
I'm all right, fella. Mike, let everybody know what you do regarding Brentford Football Club, mate.
Yeah, so we run a podcast, the Ealing Road podcast, started a couple of years ago now, covering the club, same as you guys, really. Weekly pods, opposition previews, and I've also started my own personal YouTube channel recently, which kind of takes I look at full match replays and kind of dive into sort of tactical analysis and bits like that. But yeah, like Josh, I work in football as well. So football 24/7, boys. It's the way forward, I think.
Yeah, it's good, but I don't know if it's too good for the heart at times. You know, with all the stress that you go through on a weekly basis regarding following your team and that. But Mike, let's firstly touch on Brentford, 11th in the Premier League. Wissa and Mbeumo seem to be lighting up the Premier League quite well this season. They seem to be very done with assists, goals, and everything. Damsgaard, you've got, is it Sade as well? Talk to me how Brentford's season's gone under Thomas Frank. I think it's been one of Brentford's better seasons in the Premier League.
Yeah. I mean, so we've been in the Prem 4 seasons now. We did well in our first season to stay up, and then pushed on in the second season when we had Ivan Toney scoring loads of goals, almost got Europe in that season. And then last season, massively hit by injury. So it was like kind of caveated by the fact that we had key men out in key positions basically the whole season. And that has kind of trickled through into this season as well. We haven't had sort of consistent fit fullback or first choice fullback for a while now with the injuries to Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey. But we've made do. We had that incredible home form that was kind of the narrative around Brentford. We're terrible away from home. We only won our first away game against Southampton, I believe it was, which was only a few weeks ago, really. But it was good to get off the board in terms of going away from home. And we've kind of flipped that form recently. I think we're winless in 6 at home and we've won our last 3 away games. But I don't think you can really complain as a Brentford fan. You know, we got close to Europe a couple of seasons ago, so that's something to look for in the future. But I think the club have a kind of strategy in place. We want to consolidate our status as a Premier League club and then kind of look to kick on. So I can't really have too many complaints about this season. We've been a little bit inconsistent, yet to win back-to-back Premier League games this season. So if we get a win tomorrow night, it would be the first time. But yeah, I can't complain. It's been good fun. We've scored a lot of goals, conceded a lot of goals. Games at the G-Tech are always a good laugh. So yeah, good season so far.
Last game you played West Ham, a win for Brentford. Obviously, you spoke about Brentford being unbeaten, and is it in the last 3 away games now, travelling in the Prem? So, how do you find that form's got better on the road?
I think largely it's down to the teams that we've been playing. So right at the start of the season, we had our first 5 away games were against Spurs, City, United, Liverpool, and another top 6 side that evades me now. But I think it might be Villa. But basically, all of the away games that we had at the start of the season, pretty much up until Christmas time, really. I think we had a fixture against Everton, which we drew 0-0. But all of the away games at the start of the season were against teams above us in the league. So we were kind of all waiting for a nice little purple patch where we play teams that we expect to be beating, or we expect to at least take some.
Oh, what's happened there? Can you still hear me, Josh?
Yeah, I can. I don't think it was any of us two. I think it may have just been his audio.
Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
I don't know what
was that.
Carry on. Sorry.
I can carry on. I mean, I don't know what that was, but no. So the away form started to balance out a little bit, which is kind of expected because we're playing teams below us in the table. So yeah, beating Southampton, beating Palace, which was a good win because Palace have been in decent form of recent. And then went to West Ham at the weekend and got another 3 points, which and the game, to be honest, it was a 1-0 scoreline, but it should have been more in that first half. I don't know if you boys have seen the highlights, but we had a couple of goals disallowed by VAR and another few good opportunities. So I think that West Ham, that scoreline for really flattered West Ham a little bit, and we were the better team in that game by some distance. So it's nice to see the away form balancing out. And I think largely it's just because we're starting to play teams away from home that we expect to give a good game. We give a good game to most teams, but we expect to at least be taking some points off.
Josh, what's been your thoughts on Brentford?
I don't think Brentford are one of the teams that many people in football watch unless they're playing one of the big games, which I think, considering how good of a team they are and how good Thomas Frank has done with them since they came up, is probably quite bad on our part. But the games I've watched them, the one when they beat Leicester 4-1, that doesn't even seem that long ago. But I watched the game against Chelsea and the game against Tottenham recently for the Work with Football London, and I think both games they were probably a bit unfortunate to lose. I think they lost to Chelsea just when Chelsea was starting to get into this form they're in, where Chelsea were coming on the back of a good run, and Brentford did all right against a very good Chelsea team and only lost 2-1. And the Tottenham game, I think many people would have thought Brentford would have maybe beat Spurs. I think it maybe the week after we beat them, and Spurs pulled out a win from nowhere. So they're a team that I've always admired for how they play and how the whole Moneyball system, how they've done that. But I think they deserve quite a lot of respect for being in the Premier League for 5 years now, and sitting comfortably in mid-table. You rarely hear about them being close to relegation. And I think they've looked at clubs like Leicester, for example, who maybe came up, got very high and then sunk low and got relegated and now in a mess. And teams like Norwich in the past, Southampton and Brentford have got it spot on.
I agree. I think Thomas Frank's done a fantastic job. He's obviously been big admirers from the big clubs who have wanted to bring him in, and that obviously stayed grounded to Brentford. He's gone stride for stride, hasn't he, Mike? Thomas Frank.
Yeah, no, Thomas Frank. We adore Thomas Frank. He can do no wrong in our eyes. Even if we got relegated, we'd still want Thomas Frank to be at the club, which is obviously quite rare these days in football. I think he's the second longest serving manager in the EFL, I want to say, or the second longest manager, definitely the second longest serving manager in the Premier League, but he's definitely up there in terms of the EFL as well. But yeah, I agree with Josh. I think the job that he's done and the job that Brentford have done in general in terms of staying in the Premier League, last season was a little bit squeamish towards the end because of all the injuries, but I think it was a case of the teams coming up not being to the standard of the rest of the teams in the league. But it definitely does go under the radar a little bit. I think the job that Thomas Frank has done, and there's so much made of, managers being so adamant and sticking to their principles so much, and that being their downfall. You've seen it with Vincent Kompany and Burnley last season. You see it with Postecoglou this season, which is a narrative that I've not really. It's quite new, and it's quite a big talking point these days in football. And Thomas Frank he should be the example or the exemplar in that argument, because he. Under Thomas Frank in the Championship, we were top scorers in the league 2 seasons in a row. And then When we got to the Premier League, he realised that we need to adapt to get points, play to Ivan Toney's strength, go a little bit more direct. And now we're starting to see that kind of reversion back to what we used to play in the Championship, which is, ball along the ground, playing out from the back, expansive football. So he's shown that kind of malleability, flexibility in terms of his playing style, which I think goes under the radar, especially for teams that want to come up and stay up. I think that's the way that you do it. And without spending a load of money like your Forests, for example. Brentford have done that really well. And I think a lot of that is down to Thomas Frank's game style as a manager, to be honest. He's brilliant. I think his ceiling is very, very high. And whilst I want him to stay at the club forever, I don't think he will, because I think he'll have a lot of admirers in the league.
Yeah, we've been many admirers of Thomas Frank at Leicester when we've not had managers like Brendan Rodgers and that, haven't we, Josh?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Leicester, Josh. And I know it's a bit of a sore point at the minute, should we call it? 19th in the league, 4 wins all season, 1 clean sheet. Last win for Leicester would have been Tottenham Hotspur away. Leicester, 5 defeats in a row without scoring. Equaling Norwich's record. I think it's is it the 2021 season? I think it is. So talk to me how things have gone for Leicester this season.
I think there was a stat going around, you've just mentioned it, that they joined, I think it was Sheff Wednesday, Birmingham and Norwich, and losing 5 home games in a row without scoring. I think if they don't score tomorrow, they'll be the first team to ever do it in top flight history, to go 6 games. So it's a pretty diabolical record to have. I think the stuff off the field hasn't helped Leicester for obvious reasons, but the things on the field, whilst I'm a strong believer that they have got better from what we were seeing under Cooper, I do think it almost feels like Van Nistelrooy and his players are holding back in a way. Against Arsenal, they were there for the taking. They weren't. I don't think Arsenal played that well against Leicester on Saturday, and I think if Leicester had the attacking players on earlier, the likes of Buonanotte, Mavididi, even Patson Daka, I'm a big advocate of Daka starting over Vardy at the moment. So I think if we had a more attacking intent, we had a more of a chance of coming away with 3 points rather than sitting on a draw, which I completely understand it's Arsenal. But if they're throwing on a midfielder to play centre forward and you're not using that to your advantage, you're just asking to be relegated. So I think the problems are the defence is pretty worrying in itself. I think Caleb Okoli's probably done enough to play in centre back. I don't really know who the strongest partner is to go with him. I don't think Faz is up for the job. I don't think Vestergaard is good enough. But we don't make the decisions, do we? But if they can, I think the thing they've got to do between now and the end of the season is kind of just go for it. We saw when we did the Great Escape with Nigel Pearson, he changed his system and kind of just went for it. Had the wing backs, had Riyad Mahrez playing a free roaming role, had Vardy just being a nuisance. Obviously, no one knew about Vardy then. It almost feels like we need to unleash the likes of Buonanotte, Mavididi, El Kanous, and maybe drop down during Ayew and Decordo Reed. There's obviously, they've got the combined age, them 3, Vardy, Reed and Ayew, 103. I don't think there's a Premier League attack that comes anywhere closer to that. And I think that's a big worry for me.
Leicester have conceded, I think it's 55 goals. I think it is in the Prem. Southampton's conceded 57, which is quite worrying, isn't it, for your defence, isn't it, Mike, when you look at teams conceding all these goals? And how important is it, Mike? Obviously, you've come up with Brentford. I mean, how important is it now? Do you think the Premier League's changed massively in the gulf from the Championship to the Prem now? And how important do you think it is for Leicester to sort of get these points now? Because obviously time's running out and it with 13 games to go.
I think I'd be interested to know your take on it, because obviously there's so much noise about John Rudkin and some of the recruitment and the contract situations with the likes of Decordo Reed and stuff, and the aging squad. Whether you guys went down, if you felt you'd have the squad capable to come straight back up. But in terms of like how important it is and the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League, I don't think it's ever been as big. And you're seeing that in the 3 teams it looks like for the second consecutive seasons that have come up are going to go straight back down. I think it is more of a closed shop, and like the blueprints for staying in the Premier League are quite few and far between. I mean, Brentford and Brighton are really the only ones that have managed to kind of do it in recent years. Palace going a bit further back. And if you don't spend a lot of money, then you kind of, the only other success stories are the Brentford and Brighton approaches, and they're all based on data. And if you don't have that kind of insight as well, then it's looking like it could be a struggle. So, but then I don't know. I wouldn't say it. It kind of depends on the squad. It depends if whether you feel like with the players that you have now and the money that you could potentially spend in the summer, and how much that's going to be affected by the EFL in terms of that ban. They're probably licking their lips at the fact that Leicester could be going down because you're going to get hit with a points deduction when you do. So, I mean, when you look at it like that, it is incredibly important. Not least because of the broadcasting money, not least because of everything else that comes with finishing in the Premier League and staying in the Premier League. But just because I feel like the fan base at the moment in Leicester, it's a little bit toxic, and it has been basically since you won the FA Cup, essentially. So it'd be interesting to know what you guys think in terms of the outside noise, and if you did go down, how bad it could potentially get, along with the possible points deduction that might come if you did get relegated.
Josh, do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, I guess we don't really know how bad it will be or how good it will be in the Championship, because you're almost right that the EFL will be licking their lips at the prospect of us coming down and they can finally punish us for last season, because I think Leicester kind of got away with it with the loophole with the rules, and the Premier League don't seem to be letting it go. I doubt the EFL will be letting it go. There is a few positives in the sense of if they do go down, they'll cash in on Mads Hermansen. They'll bring in. I don't think Bilal El Khanous will stay at the club if Leicester go down. There's a few players who are out of contract at the end of the season, the likes of Daniel Everson, who will probably go to the Championship team. But then if you lose Hermansen, do you want to keep him and have him as your number one? That's a decision the club have got to make. But yeah, I think the outside noise is not helping Leicester in so many ways. Like even the conversation that the gap between Premier League and the Championship, that's only as bad because of poor decisions by those who are in charge. Like you look at, I actually don't think Ipswich approached it well in the summer with their scattergun approach. So I think Forest did it when they came up, and they got very fortunate that the teams below them were just like us, were just as bad as them. And I think Southampton came in, which I think we would have done under Renzo. They just tried playing a style of play which you just can't do in the Premier League when you haven't got the players to do it. So I think if Leicester go down, the obvious one would be to blame the board and all that, but it dates back to maybe when Enzo Maresca left and getting that manager right. I think if you give Ruud van Nistelrooy £80 million to spend in the summer, does Oliver Skip come in for 20 mil? Maybe the squad's a bit better. And we saw the backlash of that in January with him only bringing in Koulibaly. So I think there's definitely, by all means, Leicester could go down and come straight back up again like they did last season, but it definitely doesn't have that feeling about it. I feel like if they get relegated in May, there won't be the feeling of, right, well, Leicester should be coming straight back up like they did before. And I think that's probably one that worries a lot of people. There has been like people being fearful that we're going to go down to League One again. I don't really see that. I think the club's too big to do that. But then I also thought the club was too big to go down in 2023. So the tough reality can hit you hard.
Yeah, this is the big problem with Leicester, isn't it? On and off the field decisions. The board itself, which are very highly spoke about at the minute regarding the decisions that they've made that they could have not made, they could have done better in. But it just feels we're in this vicious circle, isn't it? You look at the squad at the minute, you've got a few quality players in there, El Khanous, Hermansen, Buonanotte, and it just, you've got Ndidi in there, you've got Ricardo, who's obviously injured but will be back soon, but will it be too late in bringing him back to save us? And I don't know, it just feels like we haven't got enough in the squad. I think January was a massive thing for us to go and spend some money and really strengthen this squad and positions, and Leicester failed to do that. I know we brought in Woyo Koulibaly, but I think you need one and more players to bloody save this team, to be fair. This team for me this season's been very much touch and go at times. You know, it's like we can be good against the Man City and an Arsenal, but then you go and play teams like your Evertons when you need to be winning games, your Wolves and teams like that, and you're just not beating the teams around you, are you? So it's a struggle. Like Tony said, I think it's 3 points from 30, one clean sheet, and you're thinking, yeah, the defence just ain't going to keep you up, is it? You know, we've tried and tested Connor Cody, Wild Fast, Vestergaard, Akoli at the minute. We've got James Justin, Christensen, Luke Thomas has been in there. And, you know, it just feels like where is the right formula for Leicester? And Josh, the thing is, with the question I'm going to ask you is, how does Ruud van Nistelrooy change it?
Well, on the topic you just said about playing well against the likes of Man City and Arsenal, I think now we're past the part of the season where you can say after a game, oh, well, we played well against a worse team, we'll win that. I think when we lost to Man City, there was definitely signs of, I think we just lost to Newcastle, lost to Wolves, and we played very well against Man City and should have won. Yeah. And I think then you can say a few improvements in January, this team will be fine. We're now, if we lose tomorrow, 1-0, 2-0 against a good Brentford team, I don't think you could say, oh, well, we've played well, we can build on this for what's coming up, because I've looked at the fixtures coming up, and I think after Brentford, it's West Ham, Chelsea, United, City, Newcastle, Brighton, and Liverpool all in a row. And I don't know how many points Leicester can get from them teams. In terms of what Ruud can do, I've done a piece on it that's going to go out tomorrow. That I personally believe that he needs to change something in attack. He's tried every defender, and we've kept one clean sheet, and that came against Bournemouth, surprisingly considering how well they're doing and the night teams they've beat this season. The defence is not good enough, and I think that's very, very clear to see. He mentioned margins against Arsenal, and that's what was the difference. Them fine margins have got to start going Leicester's way, and the only way you can do that is start putting in things in place for that to happen. Have a bit of creativity in the final third. I think the most creative and the best Leicester have looked this season was in that home game to Man City, and that's when I'm 99.9% sure Mavididi, El Khanous, and Buonanotte all played that game, and they looked superb. They didn't look like a team in the relegation zone. So yeah, like I said, I've done something on how they need to change something up front, bring some creativity in. There's a lot of talk of Jake Evans and Jeremy Monga coming in. I know there's some fans who want to see them starting on the offense, saying, "Oh, well, if the players who are playing at the minute don't care, then don't play them." I don't think they don't care. I think you can see every game that they do care. And I think throwing in a 15, 16-year-old in a Premier League game, let alone against a team as good as Brentford, is just it's not something you should be doing. You bring them off the bench and you nurture them in that way. But I'd like to see Mavididi, El Khanous, Buonanotte start, and then Patson Daka starting, considering he's only started one game all season, and that was away at Liverpool, the best team in the world at the minute. He's not really been given a chance. And I think it's got to be the point where you change something in attack to cause confusion with the opposition and try and take the game to the opposition rather than waiting for a mistake or a moment of magic.
Yeah, this has been Leicester's sole season, isn't it? You know, holding off too much, you know, and some games you've got nothing to lose, have you? You know, just go for it and see what happens. You know, you've seen it with the Tottenham Hotspurs game in that second half where we started to pick up the game, went for it, scored 2 goals with El Khanous and Vardy in quick succession, win the game, you know, and this is Leicester's downfall, you know, and the phrase of decent performances only can go so far in a Premier League season, can't it, mate? Because if you're not picking up the points, then the people don't think about the performance, do they? They think about how many points you're actually getting. And if you're not getting any, it's very worrying.
Yeah, of course. I think you can kind of get away with it at the start of the season. If the performances are there, you're not too worried. But when the performances, because they're never going to be consistently at the level, but when you start to get the dips in performances and then you're also seeing no points as well, then you do start to get a bit worried. Like we had it last season, we were constantly looking over our shoulder last season. And like I said at the top, I think the only thing that saved us was that the 3 promoted clubs were nowhere near the level. And obviously Everton and Forest had those points deductions as well. So no, when the performances and the result, well, I mean, we're at a point now where performances don't really matter for Leicester. So yeah, it's always going to be. But you're right though. Like I remember I was at the Man United game in the FA Cup recently, and in the first half, I thought you guys were the better team by a mile. And obviously, granted, it's Man United, and they're not good anymore. But I thought you were really unlucky to lose that day. And I wasn't looking at it like when I've watched Southampton this season, or when we played Ipswich and they managed to throw away a lead in the last minute against us, or even when we rolled over Wolves at home. I wasn't looking at it in that Man United game at Old Trafford and thinking these guys are relegation candidates. Whereas when we played Wolves at the start of the season, I thought they were shocking. Granted, Wolves, I think, do actually have a really good squad and the players are there. I think the players are just playing out of form, but I do think that they've definitely got enough to stay in the league. But you're looking at Southampton, and I think the gulf between Southampton and Leicester is actually quite big, I would say. So yeah, it's difficult. It must, like, the performances, whilst they're good against the big teams, you need to be picking up points in these crunch games. And tomorrow night is a crunch game because, like, it's not really, you got nothing to lose against us. We've only, you know, if we win, we might go from 11th to 10th. So we're not going to be gutted if we lose. But at the moment, considering our away form, I
almost feel like tomorrow's got the feeling of the Palace and Fulham games a few weeks ago, where they're games that you look at on the fixture list and think, no disrespect to Brentford, but we should be fancying our chances to get at least a point against them. And I also think it's going to follow exactly how them two games went. Leicester will start well, they'll miss a few chances. Brentford will come out in the second half.
Yeah.
And they'll make a small tweak and we won't react to it, and then we'll find ourselves 1-0, 2-0 down. It'll be game over. And I think it's got the potential to go like that. And I think because of the form, it's so hard to see anything other than a similar against what we saw with Fulham and Palace. But I just think maybe Brentford are a bit better than them two teams, in my opinion. So we'll see.
Josh, how many weeks is James Justin out for?
I have no idea. I don't think Ruud van Nistelrooy gave an actual time frame either. I think the Pereira news is kind of encouraging at the time, but I find it quite interesting, quite funny how football works. That every Leicester City fan's been slating James Justin this season, and now he's injured. They want him back. So yeah, I don't think Van Nistelrooy gave a time frame on his return. I don't think he'll be in the squad tomorrow, but fortunately they signed a right back in January, so Koulibaly will probably start with Christensen on the other flank. But yeah, I think Justin's improved. I think ever since Koulibaly was signed, James Justin's been much better. Ever since his mistake at Villa, I think he's been fairly decent, and nothing more than just fairly decent, but he's been better than what he was before. Yeah, so unfortunately I don't have an actual time frame on Justin.
Terry said time for Ruud to make them big calls. Terry, you're right, mate. You know, but the question is Ruud going to be here till the end of the season? Does he consider? I know there's been little rumours, haven't they, Josh, in like January and that about him not being happy and could walk and that if things aren't right. And how do you feel towards that? Do you think he'll be here till the end of the season if Leicester go down? Do you think he'll stay, or how do you think it's going to pan out with Ruud?
I don't think Ruud's going to leave before the season finishes. I don't think that's it. I don't think that, unless something drastic happens and we get relegated for example. But obviously he signed a contract in November, start of December. If I remember right, it's like 2.5 years. Yeah. So the plan will be to have him in charge for next season, no matter what division they're in, whether that will happen or not. But I think more what the talk was that he was getting frustrated. I think what a lot of it was putting 2 and 2 together, that he was getting frustrated with the lack of business, and then the fact that he left PSV before the season finished because of the lack of transfer. But the PSV one was different. They sold Cody Gakpo and Noni Madueke and didn't replace them, and he left when the season was nearly over. Yeah, I won't worry about Ruud leaving. Now he's pretty calm in his press conferences. He doesn't really give too much away. So yeah, I actually think he'll stay if Leicester go down as well. Depending on what the situation is with PSR and the finances, I think he's got the chance to, because if he gets relegated with Leicester after a free-stint spell with Man United and not seeing the job through with PSV, he's not really got the best reputation. If a job comes up, if Thomas Frank leaves Brentford to go to Chelsea or someone, Brentford wouldn't. I don't think they'd look at Van Nistelrooy if he leaves Leicester in the summer, because he's got nothing to back himself up. There's other managers out there. So yeah, I think in terms of his short-term future, I don't think we've got anything to worry about.
No, I agree. Let's get on to the big game then. We'll go through a little stats in a minute. Josh, we'll start with you regarding Leicester being the home team. I mean, how does this game pan out? How big of a game is this? I mean, we've said a must-win so many times this season to the point where it's like we've given up on using that word. We just need to use something else because I don't think it's been working. But how much of a game is this for Leicester? Obviously, home form's not great going into this game. I think Brentford's going to be licking their lips. You know, they've got quality, aren't they, in Wisserin and Bumo to put Leicester to bed, aren't they, and other players as well. But how key of a game is this for Leicester? For one of the 13 games, what's left? How do you see this one panning out?
I think between now and every game will be I don't really like the word of saying of must win because if they could lose 4-0 on Friday, still stay up. But it may be a must not lose. I think if they win, they go out the relegation zone, and then Wolves have got Bournemouth and Ipswich have got Tottenham. So the psychological benefit of being outside the relegation zone as the weeks tick over is massive. So I'm quite a positive when it comes to predicting how Leicester games go. I'm quite positive. I get a lot of stick from my mates and Jordan, who I work with, for being so positive. But I've not called a Leicester win since West Ham. I said that we'd beat Newcastle away, and that didn't go to plan. So but I do think they'll win tomorrow. But I think it'll be a very scruffy 1-0, 2-1, and I think it won't be down to Leicester's quality. I think we'll just be fortunate to get Brentford on an off day. It's a typical mid-table versus relegation fodder game, and then just not being at the races, I think.
Mike, Brentford, I mean, how do they approach this game? I mean, Leicester probably lay down for you and turn into Charity FC and give you 3 points maybe. Or we can actually show some fight and have the bollocks to turn up and go and fight for relegation survival now. So how do you see this from a Brentford perspective?
I think looking at the last time we played, obviously it's difficult to make a judgment because I think Rude was in the stands that day. And you guys went 1-0 up, but as soon as we got our second goal to turn it around to 2-1, it kind of turned into a training match. It was just like we were just strolling about the pitch. Was
that Jordan's first goal for Brentford as well?
It was his first hat trick for Brentford.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to make a judgment on that. Based on our last 3 away games, we've shown, I think, a little bit of grit defensively, which hasn't been there for the large part of the season so far. And obviously, it's with the caveat that we're playing teams or lesser teams or teams below us in the table now. So we're kind of expecting to be a little bit more defensively resolute. And in the West Ham game, I think we created enough chances to be 3 or 4 up before half time, and then defended really well in the second half. It was really nice to see Thomas Frank, maybe not like he has done a couple of times in the past, but once we get the first goal, he was very keen to kill that game off. And you could see that with how fast we were going forward and the kind of weaknesses that he spotted in West Ham's midfield. The fact that they didn't start with an out-and-out 9 and kind of played Paqueta in a false 9 really congested the middle area of the pitch. And we were just ruthless in transition. So look, if we're going off the last 3 away games, I'm saying it's a Brentford win because I don't think that we blew away Southampton. We beat Palace, who've been quite good. I know that was Palace at home and they're a bit of a different team away from home this season. And then against West Ham, I thought we were far the better team. So, I mean, in terms of the lineups, you guys play with a flat back 4. I can't see Thomas Frank switching that up either. And yeah, we've got Wisser and Mbumo and Sharda and Damsgaard. And in that front 4, you've got 4 attacking players that can hurt a lot of teams and a lot of good teams, especially Mikael Damsgaard. He is obviously Wisser and Mbumo will get all the plaudits this season, but Mikael Damsgaard, just watch him play football. It's a real privilege. He's so good.
Yeah, I think this is to be fair, I think this is a real, it's one of them make or break games for Leicester. We either want it or we don't, and Leicester this season don't really give you optimism. You go into the game with a little slight hope and you think, yeah, can we actually get something? Well, I mean, we did against Spurs. And then we thought to ourselves, maybe we can build on that Tottenham win. And then we went to Everton, got absolutely floored. I think we conceded a goal in bloody 6 seconds of the game. And then we're like down on our knees again, and we're thinking, for God's sake, man, this is gonna not end well. And then you go into like the Arsenal game at home. Obviously, they didn't have a forward at the time. I think all their forwards have been injured. Leicester defended well for 80 minutes, but there's just nothing in attack. And it's like with Leicester this season, it's kind of, we've not got the threat to threaten any team. It's like people come to Leicester and think, yeah, we're not really going to be scared of Leicester, are we? They're just going to not do a lot. They're going to be defending more than attacking. We'll have more shots against them than they'll have against us. And that's been the majority of the case this season. That's why we've conceded so many goals. And it's like we're too patient. We're too, how do I call it? What's that word I'm looking for? Too cautious. I know we had that under Steve Cooper, cautious football, and it got points at times, but under Rude, it's only been one win in the last 10. So it's not really the way we need to. We need to change ahead of this game. I think we've got to add width to the game with Buonanotte coming in. I think Mavridi's got to start for me, and we've just got to go and give it our all. I think Woyo Koulibaly, I think I was impressed with him last game against Arsenal. I thought he was impressive. I think he could offer something in this game. Maybe Luke Thomas comes in for Christensen. I think Luke Thomas's 2 games, what he's played, he's been better than what Christensen's offered all season for me. So it's them fine margins, and Leicester we've got to bloody hold out, really, haven't we? Because you talk about your front four. It's can we defend your front four, and that's the question. You've got actually forwards who can actually finish. Arsenal didn't. They had to bring a centre defensive midfielder onto the pitch to actually get their goal. So yeah, it's a tough game. I think after this is West Ham, and then obviously we've got, like Josh said, Liverpool, Brighton, Newcastle, and you thinking, Jesus Christ, where's these points going to come from? But yeah, head-to-head stats. Leicester, of course, in the Premier League, have won 1 to drawn. Obviously unbeaten in the last 4 against Brentford. I believe Josh said 1953. So you look at the last time out, 2-2. I mean, that was a type of game of a bit of, I think we were in like the relegation battle then, Josh, as well, the 2-2.
Yeah, that was the first game of the season, though. That, to be fair, that was a game where the red flag should have been there for us because we were 2-0 up.
Yeah.
Cruising. I think Tony scored, and then
Josh De
Silva. And
Josh De Silva curled one in.
Yeah. And I think that there, I can remember thinking, I think at that stage it was fair to say that Leicester were above Brentford in terms of quality, and thrown away 2-0 lead on the first day of the season after. And I think that was when the Wesley Fofana thing was happening. That I think the interest had just come. So yeah, we should have really noticed the red flags then if there weren't any before, which there obviously was with like the Forest Cup defeat. But yeah, that Brentford game was an early one.
Yeah, I think that was Timothy Castagnet's best goal for Leicester, the one that he scored against Brentford. But Josh De Silva made it even better for Brentford, didn't he? Scoring an absolute banger into the top corner late on. And yeah, like you said, there was worrying sides there, defensively, Brentford never sat back. They got at Leicester when they wanted to. I think you had Frank the Tank back then, as he'd like to call him, didn't you, Mike? And he caused Leicester issues. But, it's a different Leicester team now than what it is. How do you compare them 2 sides, Josh? The squad that we've got now in the Premier League to the squad we obviously got relegated with when we did play Brentford at the KP last time?
Well, in terms of proof, they're both as bad as each other. Maybe the team that went down in 2023. In fact, no, not maybe. That team should never have gone down with the players that they had. Even, I think, players like Tillemans, Maddison, Barnes get into a lot of Premier League teams in and around Leicester. And apart from maybe the top 7.
No comparison, yeah.
At the time they got in. But the defence of that season was bad. We were let down by the goalkeeping situation, letting Schmeichel go and never replacing him. Then having Danny Ward, which I really don't like the criticism Danny Ward gets, but he didn't perform well that season. I think that's quite obvious. So, but this season's team's a lot in terms of quality, a lot poorer. And we don't have the creativity of a Maddison in that whole. Bilal is a brilliant footballer, but it's his first season in England, and sometimes you can tell that he's a player who's just come from Europe in his first season. I think him and Buonanotte, even though he's been in England for a few years, it almost feels like they forget they're playing in a Premier League game and they feel like they've got too much time on the ball. Which players like Damsgaard, for example, I think when he joined Brentford, I think you can help support this or go against it. But when he first moved to the Prem, he was nowhere near the player he was now. But he came with good potential, and he probably didn't get. He took a while to get used to the Premier League.
Yeah,
and I think Leicester have got that problem with Bilal, where he's a quality player. Everyone can see it, but there's certain periods of games where you can just see that he's so experienced with what this league offers.
I agree. Let's go through starting 11 then before we get on to score predictions. I'll tell you what, we'll let Mike go first regarding Brentford. What's your 11, Mike, for how Thomas Frank's going to set up in this one?
I don't see it changing at all, really, from the West Ham game. So Flecken in goal from right to left, Ayer at right back, Collins. And actually, there'll probably be one change because Sepp van den Berg got injured against West Ham. So Ethan Pinnock will come into the back line. Keane Lewis-Potter's doing a shift at left back this season, and he's doing pretty well. Probably a better left back than he is a left wing, if I'm honest now. Vitaly Anel and Christian Norgard as the double pivot with that front four of Damsgaard, Sharda, and Bumo and Wissa. I don't think there'll be much or too much variance outside of that change at centre half because Sepp van den Berg picked up an up against West Ham.
Fantastic. Josh, I mean, how do Leicester line up for this one? I know we'd love to see a Buonanotte in there and someone of that calibre, but it just never seems to be the case, does it? He always seems to go for a Jordan Ayew or a D. Cordova-Reid type of player over Buonanotte. But how does Leicester obviously line up for this one?
I think there will be changes from the Arsenal game. I think Koulibaly will probably play it right back, and then you've got the centre back of Okoli and Faz. But even just saying it's not the strongest, is it? And then I think Christensen was decent against Arsenal. I do agree with you. I think Luke Thomas, when he has played, has been all right, and Christensen's been relatively poor. But I think against Arsenal, he was okay. So I expect him to play. And then Samare and Ndidi in midfield. And then, as much as I want to see Buonanotte, Bilal and Mavidi, I think he'll change one of them. I think he'll keep Ayew in, take out Reid, and then bring in Mavidi. I just don't know how he lines that up, whether he has Ayew on the right and Mavidi on the left, and then Bilal. But I'd like to see both drop out and bring Buonanotte and Mavidi in.
Yeah.
And if it was... I want to see Patson Daka start, but I don't think it's going to happen. It'll probably be Vardy again. I think what he offers is leadership and his knack of scoring goals when he needs to is obviously second to none. But the way Ruud van Nistelrooy wants to play, I think starting Vardy, or you get a Brentford centre back who are just so physical, and against him when the ball comes to him, the turnover is going to be. And like Mark said, they're really good on transition and going forward with their players up front. You play the ball to Vardy on the halfway line. If one of their centre-backs wins it, it could be so quickly just 1-0. And I think you need something different there. So I'd start Daka, but if we're doing predicted, then Vardy.
Yeah, I think Leicester's got to offer a bit more pace going into this game. I think that's what we lacked against Arsenal, that threat, to really get at Arsenal's defence. And this is what Leicester's struggled with this season a lot. It's like we'll get the ball down the left or down the right, but we never get it into the box enough. It's always backwards and sideways, and we're not taking it upon us to get it into the box. And this is the worrying part. And with Leicester, obviously there's going to be quite a bit of defending to do, aren't there? There was against Fulham and Crystal Palace in the second halves where they started to change the game, dictate the play, and Leicester couldn't handle the transition, and you've got Wissa and Bumo who have got quality in them players, the pace to get in behind, the movement, and our defence ain't the quickest, is it? Let's be fair. You've got Fass who's got a mistake in more times than anything. You've got Christensen who can get forward, bomb it down that left, but then he just gives yards on his defenders to get at him, the wingers type of thing. And then you've got centre-backs of Fass and Coley. Coley's more big, strong, can win the ball, but then Fass, it's a bit worrying you that you won't probably want someone like Fass next to you, to be fair. But then the midfield's got to be strong, hasn't it? You know, you've got to win their midfield battles, but it's about being attacking and decisive up front. And if we haven't got that tomorrow night again, where are the goals going to come from? And this has been a massive issue for Leicester. You know, we've not brought in more attackers. You know, we've just gone defensively and thought, well, this is one of them where we're going to have to sit back probably most games and hit teams on the counter attack, but it's clearly not working. Jake Evans is injured, I believe, Terry, so he won't be in the team tomorrow. I don't think Monga is. Monga fit, Josh, do you know, for this one?
Yeah. Rude's not mentioned anything about Monga being fit. He did say that Jake Evans had a little bit of a knock yesterday, I think, and I don't believe, I'm just looking now, I don't believe the under-21s are playing. So if the under-21s are playing, which they're not tomorrow, that could point towards maybe seeing Monga on the bench. But I think we've got enough players to fill out the bench without turning to the academy players anyway. So that'll be down to Rude whether he wants to start bringing them on the bench for Premier League games. But yeah, Jake Evans won't be in the squad tomorrow.
Sure. Same too. If we still ain't got the quality on the bench, I agree with whatever's said in the comments. Score prediction, lads. I mean, what are you going for, heart and head, Josh? Is it the one score that you've put already, or how are you?
I'll go. My initial prediction before I sat and spoke to Mike and actually heard about Brentford was 2-0 Leicester, just as some sort of response to what happened last week. But
might change your mind.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna. I'll go. I normally say 2 predictions, which is ridiculous because it's normally just a back both corners. So I normally do like one where I think we will win it and one which one is my real prediction. If I weren't based on Leicester, I'd say Brentford could easily win this 2-0, 3-0. Yeah. But as someone who covers Leicester and has watched every game and has got a bit of emotion into it, I think 2-1.
Fair enough, Mike.
I think logic dictates me saying it's a 3-0/3-1 Brentford win. I think
that'd be if Leicester lose 3-1 tomorrow, that'd be one of the worst results in terms of momentum for what's coming. Would be such a downing result with then their rivals they play on Saturday as well.
Yeah.
Also, like I'm also a ridiculously emotional football fan as well, so I'm always going to back Brentford to win. So like you could beat us easily on tomorrow. But I'm a fairly optimistic fan. I'm always predicting Brentford wins.
Yeah, I kind of seem to be the same. I'm either a draw or a win for Leicester this season, and I don't know. Against Liverpool, I said we'd lose, which, I don't think we expected anything to get out of the game, to be fair. But this game it's a worrying game. Like Josh said, this could be like the Fulham game and the Crystal Palace game where you put us to bed in the second half, and it probably will be that. But we've got to start picking up the points. It's one of them where if you can't win, don't lose. And listening to Mike with the bloody attack that Brentford's got, and I've seen it away this season, where you absolutely smacked our asses and put us to bed. Do you get what I'm saying? And I was there that way, and I was fuming at the end because that was one of the worst performances I've seen this season. And that's up there with the Wolves game, the Newcastle away game, Everton away as well. And can I see Leicester winning this? I tell you what, we're going to have to give it a real good go if we are. But I'm going to go for a 1-1. I'm going to sit on the fence with it. I just don't see where we're actually going to attack Brentford. 80 minutes against Arsenal, I thought we'd turn the corner. I mean, Muller Corners turned the corner terribly. We're not going on to that. They're so close to being 1-0 up against Arsenal. It's just if buts and maybes this season. You know what I mean? VK to get violated by Mbuma. I mean, it won't bloody surprise you, would it? Let's be fair. He got that kind of treatment all season. But lads, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Mike, before I let you leave, mate, let everybody know where they can find you, pal.
Yeah, at the Ealing Road podcast, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and then Mike Live and Vibes, my personal channel, where it potentially could be like a full-time analysis, looking at some screenshots from the game. So yeah, at Mike Live and Vibes, YouTube, TikTok, all of that's good stuff. But yeah, thanks for having me, chaps. It was good fun.
No, I appreciate it. All the best for the rest of the season. After tomorrow night, of course. But yeah, see you later, Mike.
Cheers, pal.
Josh, that's it then. Brentford home tomorrow. Yeah, it is. There's just no confidence either, Josh, going into this game. But, you know, we've got to find points from somewhere in quick, 13 games. But where do you realistically see us going, Josh? Do you think there's a slim chance of staying up? Or do you think if we lose tomorrow, do you think it's kind of, I don't can we do any more?
Yeah, there's still what, 39 points still to play for. So there's still plenty. We could win the next 4 and that won't guarantee anything. So I think I still think they'll stay up. I think there's enough. That is gradually getting worse. Like as the weeks go by, I'm gradually seeing like Ipswich picking up a point against Villa, Wolves playing very well against Liverpool. I think the problem we've got is if Leicester lose on Friday, we'll all be watching the games on Saturday. And if one of them team wins,
Ipswich beat Tottenham at home.
Yeah, that changes everything. And we go from being, being level on points to Ipswich to then being 3 points behind them, 2 points behind Wolves. If they lose and then both teams win, that's when you could be, because then you've got 3 points behind Ipswich, 5 points behind Wolves. And at the minute, it is just between them 3 teams to see who gets that final or them 2 spots in relegation. And yeah, it's in Leicester hands, which is all we can hope for. But yeah, they've got to start picking up points before it's too late.
Yeah, I've said that many times, haven't we? It's in our hands, and then it just doesn't seem to click, does it? But Tony says about Wolves, different class. Obviously, Cunha's pulling the strings there, isn't he, Josh? He's the type of player that Leicester sort of haven't got, you know what I mean, to really change a game in their favour.
Yeah, I think him and Liam Delap are 2 players who are so key to Wolves and Ipswich.
Yeah,
we don't have that sort of player, and I think for the season it's going to tell. I think they paid a lot for Cunha when he joined, and there was speculation linking him with Manchester United and Arsenal in January, and then with Delap, he'll probably leave them at the end of the season no matter what happens. But
yeah,
they've got a striker like that who can hold the ball up. He's aggressive with his runs. He knows where the back of the net is, and he's so young. He's got so much to prove. Where we've got Vardy, who of course is a club legend, but he's not really doing what we need him to. And Patson Daka's got 0.
That's how long he's got left. I mean, this could be the last 13 games we see him. You get what I mean? And it's what happens next at the end of the season with Vardy, isn't it? You know, it's going to be an upsetting day when he does obviously retire and does hang up his boots. But he does go down as one of the Premier League's best ever strikers. He's up there with some of the best. So yeah, breaking so many records and scoring so many goals and being in the 100 club and that and achieving what he's achieved is a fantastic accomplishment in his career. But Josh, thanks for coming on, mate. Appreciate it. Are there anything you want to tell Leicester fans what's coming out on the Leicestershire Live regarding articles?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that I've got something going on about how they need to basically start getting the ball forward and doing a bit in attack. But there's a bit of a look at the comparisons between now and 2015 and basically and of course football's all about opinions, what my opinion is that Leicester should do. But we'll obviously get the coverage of the game on Friday with Jordan and then the reaction, and hopefully it's a reaction of a win and how they can build on it rather than what's next.
Yeah. Cheers, Josh.
Cheers, mate.
That was Josh Holland from the Leicester Mercury. Good articles as always from Josh. I always like to see what Josh tweets after games as well. Yeah, thanks for everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed this stream. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you haven't subscribed already. Please get down and do so. If you watch this on playback, let me know your thoughts ahead of the game if you're a Leicester fan and a Brentford fan. Also, let me know your score predictions as well. But thank you to Josh. Thank you for Mike for joining me as well. And yeah, there'll be a match day vlog out probably Saturday morning from the Brentford game. let's see what happens then at the King Power Stadium as Leicester take on the Bees in the Friday night football. Thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great rest of the day, wherever you're up to, and keep it at the final whistle. Hi all, thank you for watching the final whistle. If you enjoy all our content, please remember to smash a like, share and subscribe to the channel.